And thanks to Manscaped for being a sponsor of Secret Friends Unite. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code SFU at manscaped.com. Thank you, Manscaped, and now enjoy the show.
Secret Friends Unite!
Welcome to the Secret Friends Unite podcast, episode 401. This is your guide to the geek side, and we are excited to share our podcast with you in many different formats. Check out all of our podcasts on our podcast network, where you can see the Holocron Chronicles, where you can listen to everything about Star Wars, the Code 47, which is all things Star Trek, our co-op mode, which is all things video games, and the one you're listening to now, which is Secret Friends Unite Prime, all things geek media. When you're done listening to that, you can also watch us and see the videos as we make them, the cool backgrounds and all the cool faces of all the people that we have on our show. Go to YouTube, subscribe, tell us what you like about the podcast, and tell us how we can be better. When you're done with that, I'm your host, Todd Oxtra, joined by, a wonderful guest this week, Mr. Josiah Martinez. We call him mostly Martinez, and he is Mostly Star Wars podcast. Welcome, Josiah.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited, humbled, honored that I was invited to be on. I've been watching your guys' stuff for a long time. I was super blessed to be part of the Holocron Chronicles with Mark and them. And so that was such a blast. And so thank you so much for inviting me on to be with you. I'm so happy to share a screen with you, my friend.
Oh, thank you very much. And just let people, behind the curtains, Charlie could not be here. He is doing, he's got his Star Trek chapters club is actually at Grand Rapids Comic-Con. They're doing some great stuff. There's pictures on Twitter. Please follow, enjoy it. If you're a fan of Star Trek, he is there repping strong. And then also we had a guest who unfortunately had a family emergency as we were recording. This is actually take two. And he will be on a future episode. We just wish him well, and hopefully good things will come from the news he got. So we'll go from there, sending prayers to him and his family. So we'll start from there as we go on to a new chapter. We're in Secret Friends Unite 401. We just celebrated 400. And by doing so, we are taking a pivot change in regards to our comic book covers. There's not many comic books that last to 400, so we decided to restart or reboot or start with the number one, which most comic books do. They always launch a number one. We're doing that today. So we are looking at number one in celebration of 401 with X-Men number one from August 20th, 1991. So we recorded this bit already, so this will be a little bit, but along the way we found out Josiah was 1 year old when this comic book cover came out. So he was not there live. I think I was a junior in high school. So I was there picking up this comic in store. This comic book was very special. It was the ongoing Uncanny was at like number 292. So obviously a lot of things were going on. The X-Men animated series was on, a lot of renaissance for X-Men. So the best way to get new readers in is start with number one, which is what they did. They created like 4 different covers, which all linked form one big image. They were sealed and polybagged, so you actually had to open them up to read them. But which meant if you're a collector, you keep one sealed, you keep one open. So it's genius marketing. They sold like 7 million copies, and this was really Team Blue and Team Yellow, kind of like 2 teams of X-Men, which was kind of a cool, unique feature of the comic. So I love the X-Men. They're one of my favorite comic book series of all time. Love them to pieces. And this, I believe, was starting off the Asteroid M series where Magneto wanted to take the mutants to space where they could be free. So Josiah, like I said, you were young. You may not have a lot of experience with this cover, but as you look at it, what do you think? I mean, is it drawn to you as a comic that's, over 30 years old now?
And I think as you look at these different covers, these 4 different covers, like each one of them is spectacular. And I think that's another thing with like the X-Men comics, just over the years, I've been able to collect a few over the years now, but like just the art style and everything is just, it's so epic. And like, as you look at each character, it kind of like draws different memories of different stories and stuff. And like what I was mentioning kind of earlier, Gambit is definitely my guy. Like he always has been. I started watching the cartoon far before I was able to ever read a comic or look at a comic. And so Gambit was, anytime that there's, Gambit having any bit of like a side role even in any comic, I am definitely a lot more excited because you're kind of drawn to different characters, I think, in any type of media. And for some reason Gambit, he had that style about him, that wit about him, that like kind of like I don't care, but at the same time like that he had heart. And so I kind of feel like that's where I was like really drawn to that character. And so yeah, looking at these, like he obviously was the first person that stood out to me. And although that they're super epic and iconic covers, yeah, that's the first thing that jumps out at me for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. It's an era too where like characters are like, "Hey, I have my uniform, but I've got a jacket on too." Like,
Yeah.
so Gambit's got like his cool like bodysuit, but he's like, "I'm gonna wear a trench coat because I'm a little
Uh-huh.
cold, apparently, or I want to be
Yeah.
really cool." I guess he needs pockets to put his cards in.
There you go. Yep.
There you go. Yeah, and Rogue's the same way. It's a really
Mhm.
short little jacket. It's kind of like a little stylish number. It goes over his shoulders.
Right.
I get. Hey,
Uh-huh.
Wolverine. Why doesn't he wear a cardigan? Because he'd probably
Yeah.
rip it putting it on, right, with his claws. Don't know. And everybody
Yeah.
at that time had like way too many. Like if they had a belt, they had pockets, and like, what are you putting in those pockets? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. Yeah, this was a fun time though of the X-Men. It was
Yeah.
just like iconic. It was a
Mhm.
lot of energy. With a property that had been essentially the number one comic book series of all time. So
Mhm.
it was Marvel's biggest at the time, which was just crazy because Spider-Man.
Yeah.
You think about him, like he is the biggest character, but at the time he was kind of struggling. He had his Clone Wars and all that stuff. So we could go on and on though, but yeah, this is definitely a place and a time that feels different than it used to because comic books do not sell 7 million copies now. But
Yeah.
oh my goodness. Well, we're about to go on a journey, and Josiah, I will tell you, we have one lady to go to for all our news and rumors in the world of geek, and that's Madam Webb. So, without further delay, Madam Webb, take it away.
Now it's time for Madam Webb's rumors and news. Take it away, boys.
Thank you, Madam Webb. Oh, Madam Webb. I was talking to Josiah, asked him where he lived, and he is from a tropical land we all love, and he's also from, I think, the land of Yellowstone. It's kind of crazy. So, Josiah, just to know, as if the agreement when you're a guest of the show is Madam Webb automatically gets a free stay at one of your places. So,
Okay.
just let you know, this a 90-year-old woman may show up at your door and says, "Hey, I'm here to stay." Don't be scared. Be cordial, and you know
Okay.
what? She's okay with doing her own laundry.
Nice.
Okay,
It's a plus.
there you go. So there you go. This is a better. I think she's very pleased with your acceptance of this. So
Yeah.
you know what? Win-win for everybody. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, we start with the news this week, and very sad news. And if you're watching the YouTube video, you can see my background, and it is all related to an icon in the world of Batman and just comic books and characters we all love. Kevin Conroy, he passed away at the age of 66 due to cancer. If you think of Batman, there have been only a handful of iconic Batmen, and no one, I think, has played the role longer than Kevin Conroy. From Batman the Animated Series to the DC animated films, he actually was in a CW episode of The Crisis where he actually played an older Bruce Wayne in live action, which was very cool. And I mean, I don't think anybody has anything bad to say about the guy. And he was alive. He was in live action things. I mean, he's got a career. His career started in like the late 70s with acting, and the fact that a voice actor who you always want to do something iconic got to play this role that lasted. And I mean, he's still iconic. I think people would. I mean, he went to video games, he went to podcasts, he went to all these different things in the role of Batman. And I don't think he ever got tired of it. And which is amazing because you come from the world of Star Wars, and some of those actors have a love-hate relationship with their role in that franchise.
100%.
Yeah. So with this, do you have any memories of Kevin Conroy, Batman the Animated Series, any of his roles?
Yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, once again, I mean, the animated series, that came out in 1992, by the time that I was, old enough to remember watching cartoons, this was definitely one of my favorites. And by then it had already been a couple of years out. So there's already a decent chunk of episodes that were like reruns to rewatch. And I think like so many people have just came out to social media saying all these amazing stories of their childhood and how he was like a part of it and things like that. And I feel like for me, it's like the voice, like him being the voice actor for Batman. It's hard to hear anyone else be Batman, because that's what I grew up with, years and years of just hearing that. And like you were saying, as he came back to like different shows and like the movies and like Batman Beyond and stuff like that, it was so exciting because once again it's that same Batman that I remember growing up with, the after school cartoon, like, so it brings you back to like such a good time of watching cartoons. And so yeah, I think I totally agree with everybody. And everything I've read about him or seen about him, anyone who's met him just says he's just an amazing guy. You imagine him to be, but everyone who's actually met him just says he was just a genuine person.
It's really amazing, especially as he aged, and he played different roles as Batman, like because he was like Batman in his prime with Batman in his series. He played a notable Bruce Wayne and Batman. He made them sound different. He made them feel like they were different people, which is very hard to do. You often hear like an actor who plays Batman, like, oh, he did a good job as Bruce Wayne, but his Batman was subpar, or vice versa. Very rarely do you get that good balance of like both and understanding what makes a good Bruce Wayne and a Batman. Because depending on how you feel, sometimes Bruce Wayne is the mask and Batman is the real persona and vice versa. So it was very cool. And then he went on to play like an aging Bruce Wayne as Batman Beyond. And at the time he wasn't that old, but now he is old. So, and then he also played him live screen the same character. So, man, I just, and then we think of like the dueling actors who played Joker and Batman, Mark Hamill, Kevin Conroy, and they loved each other and just, it's just phenomenal. Mark Hamill, I think, found a second life in voice acting. And it was I just couldn't think of a better pair.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And obviously, like you've already mentioned before, Star Wars, Mark Hamill, I love the guy. And once again, he's one of those just, people that you'd like to go have lunch with and stuff like that. And like you said, you hit the nail on the head. Like them together, that duo was just so incredible. And I feel like sometimes, even like you watch like animated series, and sometimes the voice acting becomes bigger than the animated visuals. And I feel like both of them were able to do that when, as soon as, you had the Batman Joker scenes, like it was able to come out like bigger than what you were seeing. And I love that about both of them.
Yeah. And I've always said this about voice acting. It's a special talent that is not acting. That's why when you see like Hollywood actors playing voice actors, I always feel like there's something missing, because I think they're trying to do something similar what they normally would do, where as a voice actor you have to put more into it because you have to make people believe that you are that character. And so it's a special talent. It's not, and that's why there's so very few good at voice actors. And once again, you know what it is if you watched all the Star Wars animated, it's like those characters who maybe are not the live action but are portraying classic characters, they put their stamp on it and they make you love them.
You know what? You just kind of reminded me of something. I was remembering the making of Logan with Hugh Jackman, and I don't know if you've seen any of that, but it also kind of went around. Some of the clips went around social media after the movie as well. But the scene where he's spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, but there's a scene where he's running through the forest, and he's just like, full speed, full sprint running and like chopping down trees as he's going and things like that. And anyways, it was an awesome scene in the movie, but then it showed how they're making it. He was actually on a treadmill running, and he was watching in front of him. He was watching himself, and like literally with his arms slicing, it's like, and he's full sprint running on a treadmill. So they're getting the audio for that scene. And I was just like, this is incredible. I was blown away by the fact that they went to that extreme to like, to film that audio, that he was really doing that, like. And so once again, there's something different about voice acting, when you're not on screen, per se, like it's something different.
Yeah, that's phenomenal, sir. I did not know that, but yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Hugh Jackman puts everything into his role, and why wouldn't he do that? Where other people would probably just kind of phone it in. They just go like, "Oh, like video game, like, ooh,
Yeah.
We need 18 hours. Can you give us
Yeah.
18 different versions, please? Yeah. So yeah, this is sad news, but he has a legacy that and we're going to actually, we've been discussing, we're like, it's perfect time. Let's pick our 4 top episodes of Batman the Animated Series, or Kevin Conroy doing a voice as Batman. Let's talk about that. I'm like, perfect time to do it. Let's give our praise and put in place where we could recommend why he was so good in the episodes people can watch to understand. So there you go. Very cool. Not very cool. Sad. Very sad, but I'm glad that he is getting the recognition he deserves, and that's the cool part about this. So less sad, and hopefully this is exciting news for a lot of folks, is the fact that we are getting news that Sean Levy is apparently eyeing a Star Wars movie after the 3rd Deadpool wraps. So with Star Wars, we haven't had a movie since 2019, and that's understanding which movie will be next. We don't really know. And so Star Wars has had, unfortunately, an unfortunate history of like directors hired, then let go, or things didn't work out. And so we're really hoping that they are back on track with this gap that we're getting, because they're taking the time to get a good plan in place. And what makes me excited about it is, more I hear about who they are reaching out to is a combination of people we know that make cool things and also new talent. So one of these is Sean Levy. If you've watched Stranger Things, it's Netflix's premier product. It harnesses our nostalgia, but tells new ways of telling a story with new, fresh talent as well. Good balance. And I think most people would say with Star Wars, they like when it's touching on nostalgia, but doing brave new things. So with this, it's kind of interesting because with all these things, I always take them with a grain of salt until like it's actually announced official what's the project is. It's amazing a film gets made, and until they actually get shown on the theater screen, anything could happen. So Josiah, in regards to your love of Star Wars, I don't know if you've talked about this or you've even like given your opinion on it, but what's your take on Sean Levy taking on a Star Wars film?
Yeah, I think what you just said, I totally agree. Anytime that Disney starts looking for a new director or new producers when it comes to movies or even the shows, it is really interesting to me, like who they go for, who they pick. And like you said, we'll have to see as time goes by. But if Sean Levy definitely is in talks with doing a movie, I would be super excited, super hype. Like you said, Stranger Things, amazing. I love it. I wish it would never end. And I think, like you said, it would work perfect. His vision that he had with that even for me, like, I didn't, I wasn't like in my teens in the 80s, but still the throwbacks that they have, there's a lot of things that it feels like such a familiar and comfortable world that he puts it in, but then he's throwing in all the he throws in so much other stuff, right, that it just, and he did it so well, it fits, it all meshes well. And I think with Star Wars, you're exactly right. I can't speak for everybody, but for me personally, that's what I'm into. I love when they're able to give us a little bit of the reasons why we fell in love with Star Wars, but at the same time, give us something new. And if he can do anything, like what he's been doing for Stranger Things, oh man, I mean, that movie is going to be amazing no matter what the theme is. I feel like if they can get this done, they can, get this project done with him. And, like that article said, they're supposedly starting next year. So, I mean, if this is legit and they're really starting, I'm going to be super hyped for what's to come.
Yeah, I have a interesting relation with Star Wars, and I think we're all getting to the point now where it's like there's so much Star Wars now that you don't have to like it all, and that's fine. And if something's not for you, move on. And I kind of have with certain parts of Star Wars, and that's fine. Like Star Trek or the MCU. I mean, DC is a prime example. I'm a big DC fan. I'm like, you know what? A lot of it's not very good. A lot of it doesn't, but some people love it. So I don't want to yuck anyone's yum with Star Wars anymore. I'm just like, no, I'll just like move on. because I don't have to. There's just
Mm-hmm.
it's not like the back in the day when there was like 3 movies. That was it. That's all you
Yeah.
got. I didn't know we were getting the next thing. You got better hope you better love those Ewok movies or the droids or
Uh-huh.
or the Ewoks cartoon, because that's all you're getting. Or
Mm-hmm.
and it's different. It's just so and I assume Star Wars will be around for the next, I don't know, however long Disney lasts.
Right.
So there's going to be more Star Wars. If you don't like this one, guess what?
Mm-hmm.
Next one you'll probably really like. So, and I'm hoping we're at the point where we don't have to not have a Star Wars movie in the theater, because I know Disney wants it, because they're like, we can make a lot of money off Star Wars in the theater versus just Disney Plus. So,
Right.
yeah, I think this is really good news. I think this is
Mm-hmm.
really cool. Along the way, though, once again, I want a group of new creators and people
Mm-hmm.
that can tell really good stories. If you get those,
Yeah.
we can have some really cool stuff. So very, very cool in the world of Star Wars. Something that is something that I really love, that is kind of one of those cross media darlings now, which is The Witcher.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I'm not sure where you stand on The Witcher, because there are books, there are video games, there are TV series, there's animation, there's comic books even. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever you like, it's there, and it's all telling their stories in various different ways. It's not like there's
Mm-hmm.
one canon anymore, which is confusing to some folks, because it's like, well, what
Right.
is it? Because the TV series is based on the books, and then the video games are based on the books, but they all do something a little bit different, which I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate. If you're going to use a
Yeah.
medium, use what the medium is best for, versus just telling the same story the same way. So
Right.
with The Witcher, we've had like I said, video games, the books, and a couple of animated series, and then the TV series. And we know that Henry Cavill's going off
Mm-hmm.
after season 4. He's going away. We're getting a new person replacing him. But the cool part is we are getting this 4-part prequel series that takes place 1,200 years before the Witcher TV series.
Mm-hmm.
And it stars Michelle Yeoh. And this is essentially, I'll just give you the byline. Set 1,200 years before the events of the main series, the 4-part special event tells a story lost to time. One of 7 outcasts who unite against an unstoppable power that took everything from them. Their blood quest giving rise to a prototype Witcher in a conflict that brings about the conjunction of the spheres when the world of monsters, men, and elves merge to become one. This stars, like I said, Michelle Yeoh. Also, Minnie Driver is in this. Very interesting. Yeah,
I
I'd like
saw
Minnie Driver.
That was interesting.
Yeah, interesting casting. And then a bunch of other actors. I really could not tell you if I've seen them in other things. They give you their names, but I don't.
Yeah.
It's not giving me any context, because once again, it's a prequel 1,200 years in the future. This reminds me of Lord of the Rings, Ring of Power, which I'll talk about in the Geek Easy. But once again, so far removed from what we know that it kind of allows you to tell a story and like say, you know what? These people are all dead. So guess what? They can have stakes and they'll tell a really cool story. And you don't have to worry about it if you like the other stuff too, because maybe it leans into it, builds into something different in this context. So yeah, and the teaser was very cool, very short. This comes out December, right around Christmas time, which is great, and they'll drop it all at once. So I'm very excited for this. But once again, it's going to drop, and that's all I'll get. And I assume this is just to carry us over until Witcher season 3, which I believe is a 2023 release. So I'm very excited about this. So what's your take on all this?
Yeah, like you said, the teaser, it was short, but it was incredible. Like the score already, like that sounded incredible. All of the wardrobe and everything like that looked great. I'm not sure, I didn't look up where they did the filming, but that looked beautiful as well. Like, oh man, just kind of everything visually was already looking amazing. They showed a little bit of some of the fight action scenes, which I'm always up for. So yeah, that looked really good. This teaser really got me excited for it. Like we had already kind of talked about, Michelle being in it. Anything that she's in, I'm already pretty much down for, because she's such an amazing actress. So yeah, that's going to be awesome to see her be kind of like the front runner of the show. I'm really interested to see Minnie Driver in this type of show. That'll be interesting. She's also an incredible actress. So yeah, I'd like to see where her character ends up going. And lastly, kind of like what you had already mentioned, I love these prequels. They, everybody can jump on the bandwagon for all that I'm concerned, because I love the Ring of Power, the House of the Dragon. I love the fact that, even in this, like, short little preview of what it's going to be about being lost to time, I love the fact that, like you said, everyone's already dead. A lot of these stories can now just be legend. So, for all that we're familiar with, whether it be from the books or the game or the show, you can really take it any way you want, because just because something is said that happened when you're talking 1,000 years prior, it really, the story could have changed like tremendously. So I love the fact that we're jumping back to a time where, like you said, the stakes can be high. Main characters can die, like everything, you don't know what's going to happen, because when you're really close to something that's already existed, it's really difficult because you kind of have to make it match. But when you go so far back, you really, like, the director has so much leniency on where he wants to go with the story and the characters.
Yeah, and looks like it's going to really focus on the elves. And we know in The Witcher that the elves are at a low point. They're essentially a beaten down
Yeah.
race of people who essentially have had horrible things happen to them, and we don't know how they got there, because typically you think of the elves as always being like highborn and always at a certain level of, in The Witcher not so much.
Yeah.
They're basically almost treated like the X-Men, the mutants and the X-Men, and it's outcasts. So I'm curious to see what they do, and I really liked, if you get a chance, I really loved the Witcher prequels, kind of like telling of how the Witchers actually came to be, which I really liked. It was very good. So, but apparently there's going to be a ton of Witcher going forward. So I hope the quality continues, because if it falls off, that's going to be really sad. And we're supposed to get like a billion new Witcher games, like they're remaking Witcher 1, which I'm really excited about, because I tried playing the original one, did not work, it was an old game in a different perspective. So I'm all for this. And like I said, one of the things I always say, fantasy is so hard to pull off, because it can come off as cheesy, dumb, stupid, and versus sci-fi, which I feel like you can play with a little bit more and people take it more seriously. So and The Witcher has been really, really pleasing to me as a big fantasy buff. So I guess we'll have to just wait, though. So I cannot wait. Come December, something to do after you open up your presents, folks, if you celebrate.
There you go.
Yes. And then next, this is kind of like my secret shame. I've seen John Wick 1, but I haven't seen the rest. And I love John Wick 1. I have no excuse, Josiah, to say, why, Todd? I own them. Like, why haven't you watched them? I don't know. Something keeps coming up, but I'm going to make time, because I really love the series. I'm a big fan of stylish action done well. Like, it just, it's like choreography. It looks beautiful. And, we're in the Renaissance. Is that right? The Renaissance? Kind of like the Renaissance, as we just talked about. So we do get a new trailer for John Wick Chapter 4. There's already an announced John Wick like spin-off, which I think it might be a prequel. I don't know, but the John Wick universe is growing. And with this, I don't know if this is announced as the last movie, but it seems like he barely survives any of these films. He's obviously in this, so I know he made it. So I don't feel like I guess I've been spoiled. Like, oh, he didn't die in 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So, so I guess, but the trailer just looks like, once again, I don't know if it does anything new, but it definitely made me feel like, wow, I just love the fact that we are now getting intelligent action films that are largely just like revenge films, and they can be done well, and not just like Arnold Schwarzenegger back in the day or something like that. So, really good action films. Obviously we had the Hong Kong films, John Woo. They kind of brought the Renaissance back in the 90s. Things got dumb and bad again with the Fast and the Furious films. I mean, depending on how you feel, it's like, it's dumb fun, as I always say. And Charlie says, Todd, you call it dumb fun. I'm like, I know, because it's like, it's fun, but it's not, it doesn't make any sense. It's just like, that should not have worked, but oh well. So with that, and Chapter 4 debuts, I'm looking at the release date, March 24, 2023. It looks like 2023 is going to be a banger of a year for like movies and stuff. So with all of that I've said, is this something that you are excited about? Is this a series you follow?
Yeah, John Wick, like I feel like it kind of like Keanu Reeves, John Wick, it's so interchangeable, because you can't have one without the other. If you love Keanu, then you're gonna love the movies. If you like bang bang, shoot 'em up action, and like you said, intelligent action, these are very good. Also, what's I feel like a lot of times understated in these movies is there is actually very good dialogue. You wouldn't really think so, but there's some really good dialogue. And if you haven't got a chance to look at the trailer for John Wick 4, definitely do it, because there's some pieces of dialogue that they at surface level seem basic, but they actually make you think, like there's some interesting dialogue that's going on here. And I'm super excited for it. I know the last one had like Lance Reddick,
Mhm.
and he's an excellent actor.
He should be in everything. Oh
he
my
should, he
goodness. Oh
totally
my
should.
goodness. He
I would
needs
have
to
him
be
in
in more
anything.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm excited to see where they take it. I think it is fair that you bring up like Fast and the Furious, because I think a lot of times when you start getting into this many movies, a lot of times it's hard for the directors and the producers to find something new to to make the stakes matter, make the decisions matter. And you also have what happens a lot of times, like in like sci-fi fantasy movies, but even in movies like this that aren't so crazy, you still have the issue of like power creep. Like you can't continuously make something that's more powerful, right? Because then eventually it's like the hero has to be more powerful than the villain, and you just have to keep on going up and up and up, and that eventually gets to where you're saying that it gets cheesy. Like that's impossible. Like what I'm seeing, that's impossible. But anyways, I feel like they've done really good. And I think also because of John Wick, the actual character, the building in his arc, I guess you can say, you continuously care what's going to happen. And I think that's what they've done really well in this. And I know that chapter 4 is going to do well because like they've been hitting out of the park so far. And I think it's just going to continue on. I don't know how many more they're going to make, or if they're going to start, like you're saying, doing spin-offs, but I think that that's going to be a good one.
Yeah, and you just have to wonder, like, Keanu Reeves is at a certain age.
Right.
And those movies demand a lot from the
Oh
actors
yeah.
because you have to train. I mean, and you wonder, like, well, can he keep bringing it? Can he raise to your point, can they keep raising the bar? I mean, you don't want to be John Wick in space. Like,
Yeah.
strap a rocket to a back of a Fiero like the certain movie
Right.
did. Yeah, so you wonder, and it's like also like, did we already do that stunt? Can't remember, because
Yeah.
that's the rate. You just like, so obviously good writers can continue to do that. I believe it's the same director continues to be there, so they have a good relationship. They know it's in. They're all in on this. So, and I always wonder, I'm like, when they made the first one, did they think like, oh, we could make this into a thing versus now where they are?
Yeah.
Like, you always wonder, like, it was the genius in place. It's like, we have a plan. If we can just get this first movie to work, I've got a plan already. So it's like any other franchise. Like, did they always imagine to be a franchise, or did it just did dumb luck take place?
Right. Yeah.
Well, that is something to look forward in 2023. But something we probably have to look forward in 2027 is the fact that our new showrunners for the DC, I believe it's called Universe. I can't remember what it's officially called. It's not the DCEU anymore. It's called something else. But this is James Gunn, Peter Safran. They have a long plan to map, apparently, one great overarching story, which I always worry when I hear that, because if it's not organic and it's not planned out like Kevin Feige did, where he's like, he had a plan well in advance. He lucked out because he got to do things at Marvel before Disney bought them. So essentially, he had no one telling him no. They had no one telling him you can't do this, because essentially Marvel was on bankruptcy. They were having all these problems, but they had someone, and they didn't have a successful film that they actually owned. So it just happened to be the perfect fruition of everything. And when he went to Disney, they essentially said, keep doing what you're doing and we'll bankroll you. So luck, that's a great story in all time. I mean, no one can duplicate that. So it's a fool's errand to do so. So I always hope that somebody comes up with a separate path. So with James Gunn and Peter Safran, they essentially have a long plan coming about. Obviously, we have to get through everything that's already essentially done or in the books before they had anything to do with it. So we're essentially looking at, probably before we see them, anything that they're doing beyond what Gunn is already doing, because I think Peacemaker season 2 is coming up. I think he has some other things planned as well. But really, we're probably looking at 2025, 2026 before we see the first thing that this group has planned to actually come out. And it's funny because I've always said this. Well, DC always has a 10-year plan. It just depends on which 10-year plan it is, because it was the 10-year plan from 5 years ago, the Snyderverse, all those things. And so once again, my caveat is always, there's so much DC stuff. You don't have to say all DC sucks. You can say, I don't like that specific DC thing.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine. because I did not love Black Adam. I thought it was okay. It was a film that I felt like should have came out in 2005. But then there's other things I loved, like Peacemaker and some of the smaller projects they've had. So in Stargirl, one of my favorite DC things that's on right now is getting canceled after season 3. So very sad. So I'm excited to see what they do. I hope they have a vision, and I hope they have the ability to actually execute it versus Discovery, Warner Brothers, whatever it's called now, essentially intermingles and makes some bad decisions. But I hope this is the right group to do so. So with my piece said, and I hope this works, do you think DC has a cohesive plan under this leadership?
I think they have a plan.
Okay, there you go.
I do think that, they gotta be, it's unfortunate. I would have loved for them to hit so many different things out of the park. And I will say, like, just kind of even moving forward in this is the first time we've really got a chance to talk face to face. But a lot of, any type of entertainment that I jump into, whether it's, books or games or movies, shows, I go in definitely probably a lot more positive than the average person. I'm not a very big critic because I love looking at like the backstory. If I listen to a song, I'm going to be like listening to, oh, like what type of instruments are they using? Oh, how did they do this? Oh, this person's the one that wrote it. Oh, that's interesting. So then I can kind of appreciate it a little bit more than someone just saying, oh, I listened to the song, it was kind of lame. I kind of do the same thing with like movies, books, all those types of things. So with DC, they've definitely been kind of a letdown for me. And I will admit, like Black Adam, I was pretty excited about it. I know I was a little worried because although I love Dwayne Johnson, sometimes it borders on the cheesy versus funny, which that's really tough to find. And I think like I'll say like even like the last Thor movie, Love and Thunder, the cheesy sometimes overpowered the funny. And I think that a lot of times is what kind of gets me, like I'm like, oh man, they were so close to making it funny, now it's just cheesy. So yeah, I think DC's starting to kind of figure out the things they've done wrong in the past 6 years, I'd say, and hopefully they continue to get a little bit better each time. It was interesting that you brought up some of those shows, right? Just like Marvel, I think DC is doing some pretty good shows. And I think what's unfortunate is sometimes they don't get as much publicity or viewership because a lot of them are under the umbrella of HBO, which is a decent chunk of money. Like, and especially like what was it, like even like a year and a half ago, maybe it was like $15. I think now it's cheaper, it could be like 10 now. But like when you were kind of comparing, it's like, oh, Netflix with I can get the base one for like $7.99, or Hulu, I can get like the base one for like $5.99. So when people are especially like with the economy the way it is, if you're trying to like decide which one to get, unless you really know what's on HBO, I don't think that's the go-to. If they're like, I can only have one, it's probably gonna be like Netflix or something. But if you have HBO and you haven't done this, dive into the DC. There's a whole section of DC shows and movies and stuff like that. Man, there's some incredible ones. Like, and anyone can fight me on this, but like you're saying, like the Peacemaker and the Doom Patrol and what's the young
Titans.
Titans. Yeah, I always want to say Teen Titans, but so just Titans. Yeah, that one too. Like each one that I jumped into, I was like, wow, this is actually impressing me. I did not expect to be like invested in this story. Now, once again, just like any kind of superhero show, there is going to be moments that and you guys can tweet me and say what you want. There's some like cheesy stuff a little bit, but for the most part, the stories are really good. The characters are good. They're funny. The threats are feel real. There's a lot of like drama and emotion, and I will say I do like that about DC. It has always had like kind of this kind of like moodiness, drama, like more dark, I guess you could say, right? And so there's definitely there's stuff where you're like, I can understand why they would feel this way. The hero doesn't have to always be perfect, right? they can make a lot of mistakes. They can, they can end up doing the right thing, but after doing dark things, And so, yeah, I think that they've started doing really good also with their shows. And sometimes I wish they would be like, can you do what you did in this show at the theater? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I hope they have a better balance because, to your
Yeah.
point, it seems like DC is recently has gone more to the dark. It's more
Mhm.
R-rated, more mature, and it's like if you can't have a kid be able to watch Batman and Superman, kind of
Yeah.
failed. And I always feel
Right.
like that we shouldn't have to have our heroes be dark to be appealing. And I
Mhm.
always feel like Superman's not a hard character to write well.
Mhm.
It just takes the right writer with the right story to make Superman super inspiring, super compelling, and there's lots of source material you can pull up. Like, these are the best Superman stories. Look what they did well. And Superman didn't have to kill someone. He was helping
Yeah.
people, be inspiring, doing the right thing, making hard choices, and making sacrifices. Just same with Batman. I mean, one of my favorite
Mhm.
Batman series of all time is Batman the Brave and the Bold. It was just
Mhm.
goofy and fun, over the top, but really at the heart of Batman was there. So,
Yeah.
and actually, that was one that Kevin Conroy did not voice, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot there. To your point, there's a lot of on things, and DC does some great animated films too with all their properties, and I think
Mhm.
they've been great at that too. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I hope it's a good balance. They have something
Mhm.
for all ages and something for that's more mature, and they balance it well. Because one of
Yeah.
my favorite DC things right now is The Sandman, and it's actually on Netflix. It's not on HBO Max, so it's a little weird.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Well, very, very good. Well, we've gone down a journey of the news. So, Madam Webb, I believe, is packing her bag. She's on her ways to Josiah's house now. So, with that, it's our time now to head over to our favorite geek establishment, get some drinks, hear some tunes, and get our nerd on. Before we go to the geekies, I want to say thank you for Manscaped for being a proud sponsor of our podcast network. All the podcast hosts got these. What we got from Manscaped, just to try it out, just to see if we actually were behind these products, was the Performance Package 4.0. It contains the things you see behind me, all with a carrying case. We also got shorts and a cool shirt. We use these products. They keep us looking very trimmed, very well groomed for your head, the rest of your body, your nose, your ear, and all the bits you need to keep groomed. And when you're done using the lawnmower for a bigger trim, the weed whacker for your nose and ear, then you can use their refreshing products like the ball refresher, which is nice and soothing to keep your skin feeling nice and fresh after you shave, and also the crop reviver. So all those came in the Performance Package 4.0. You don't have to buy all of those together. You can buy them separately for your individual needs. But we really like these products. My favorite part of the products that Manscaped provides is the light on the lawnmower. So you can lighten up those shadows so you can do a good job and you don't miss any bits and pieces. So once again, thank you, Manscaped, for supporting SFU. And remember, that's code SFU gets you 20% with free shipping at manscaped.com. Unlock your confidence. Always use the right tool for the job with Manscaped. Now it's time for the geek.
Talk nerdy to me. Talk nerdy to me.
We're sitting the Geek Easy, drinks are poured, cover band's playing, and we are ready to get our nerd on this week. So, Josiah, what have you been watching, reading, enjoying the world of nerd?
Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff. Definitely show wise, there's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, definitely. We have the House of the Dragon, the Rings of Power. Both of them very different, but both very good. Both prequels, which you could say is similarities there. We had talked about it earlier in the show, but part of the reason why I love both of these is you don't really know what's going to happen. It's so far in the past that you don't really know. And so that's what keeps it interesting. I love seeing a different time of both of these things. I love kind of, seeing the power of the Targaryen family, in the House of the Dragon, which, as we start, it's very different. And and what we know of the show later. and then Rings of Power. Once again, very different time period, very interesting. I guess the span of time, even though it's so far in the past, they span a time within the first few episodes that gets you like, wow, like I've seen so much in so little time. I will have to admit, Rings of Power, um, all of those shots, all those locations, just absolutely stunning. They, man, I like sometimes you just want to be there. It like it's a crazy time. Like I'd probably die if I was there in battle somewhere, but it is so beautiful. Like, every shot that they have is just amazing. Even like the CGI stuff, they put it in and it's incredible. Great job there. But yeah, as far as shows, that's what kind of me and the wife are watching right now. Books, I'm a big book reader. I love reading, any type of stuff like biographies, things like that. But currently what I'm reading is the second book, so book 2 of the new Thrawn Ascendancy, Greater Good. So I'm about halfway through that right now, and yeah, definitely I love all the Thrawn books. So when they came out with the next trilogy, I was super excited to jump into that. I love, anything that's kind of like based on something, but something you don't know. And that's what I love about Thrawn. He kind of came out of nowhere and ended up being an incredible character. And I love that there's more motivations that are kind of behind the scenes, and kind of just like his viewpoint on life and the galaxy and everything like that is a lot bigger than a villain. It's a lot bigger even than kind of like an anti-hero. It's a very interesting story. So if you haven't like really checked out any Thrawn books, even if you jump back to the old ones, definitely they're very good. They're, even if you're not a big Star Wars fan, they're just very incredible stories. There's a lot of intelligence in what the author's doing. Timothy Zahn is
Mhm.
the author. He's very intelligent in the way that he tells stories, but um, it's very like welcoming, I guess you can say. So it's not really off-putting, which a lot of times happens in like kind of like fantasy sci-fi. The words are kind of big and you don't understand a lot that's going on. It's very approachable, but at the same time, like you feel like you actually learned something as a nerd, which is cool. But yeah, so those are my shows. That's my book right now that I'm kind of diving into.
We actually saw the author who created Thrawn at C2E2 last year in
Oh,
Chicago.
nice.
Super nice guy. And it was funny because
Yeah.
someone sent him like a puppet of Thrawn, and just the way he talked about it. And I am definitely a neophyte when it comes to like Star Wars, because obviously that was EU creator, basically filling the gaps because there was no movies, no TV shows. You need something. And that became a thing. And the fact that it got brought back into continuity
Mm-hmm.
is amazing. And I would hope more of those type of let's see what worked and are cool story ideas, and let's bring those in, because there's a lot of good ideas, and I hate to see, hate to see anything just tossed away because, well, if it came for me, it's probably crap. No, there's probably
Yeah.
some good ideas there. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think, if Lucas blessed it to be made,
Yeah.
then he probably said, there's some merit in it. He obviously, yeah. So yeah, that's really cool idea, and I'm gonna actually piggyback onto your Lord of the Rings of Power, because I just finished that, and it was
Nice.
a series. I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. A friend of ours, like, he loves the Lord of the Ring movie, soured on the Hobbit movies, and he's kind of been like, I don't know if I want to jump into this. And I'm like, I was the same boat. I'm like, what are they going to really do? Is it going to
Mm-hmm.
really compete with Peter Jackson's trilogy? And I always think about it this way: there was an animated Lord of the Rings series long time ago. If you want to watch that, that was a take on it. Then
Mm-hmm.
you got Peter Jackson's take on it, and I'm like, it's like Shakespeare. Shakespeare, you're going to have a new take on Romeo and Juliet. There's not one definitive. It's going to be the same way.
Right.
And we can say now with Tolkien being a master of fantasy, kind of like the
Mm-hmm.
person that brought fantasy to the, like, it's allowed to take and do different takes on properties we love.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll see that in the future where somebody does something with classic Star Wars, like, here's a new take on it. Don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll happen. Maybe it won't. Like you see, I don't know if you've ever seen the anime version of like A New Hope, where
Mm-hmm.
they do that's beautiful. It's like,
Yeah.
that would be cool to see, because there was
Mm-hmm.
manga of it and there was different takes on it. So I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
with this, I was worried. I'm like, what are they going to do? How are they going to be able to tell a story? Being 1,000 years before certainly helps, a lot of people are not as familiar with all the mythos and all the core material. So a lot of the things were new to me because I've I'm not a nerd about it where I get into things not a nerd, but I mean I don't get into the depths. In the fact that some of the things that happen, I'm like, I probably should have known that, but I didn't.
Right.
And it was like, oh, that's kind of cool, or that's how that happened. That's kind of neat. And there were some twists in it too that I didn't see coming, and I think they developed it a really cool way. Like, who is the stranger, and the things you don't expect. And I'm like on my elliptical watching episode 8, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready for the next episode. Oh, it's done! Holy cow! It's over. Season done. When is it coming back? And I probably cursed because why was I watching on an iPad where, like you said, all these beautiful visions. It's not done justice by being on an 8-inch screen. So I realize that, but you watch stuff when you can, especially you got family and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But beautiful show. Beautiful. Love it. And I can't wait to see where it goes. I just think it's really good. Actors are great. I love the storylines. It's really well done. So kudos to Amazon for investing $500 million. Now, did we really need to spend that much? Well, I'm glad they did, but
Yeah. It's not my money, so I'm happy.
Exactly. If they're going to spend it, what are they going to do? Put rockets into space or something like that, cure cancer?
Yeah.
No, make a good show, please. Sorry. So I can't recommend it highly enough. Even if you're not a fantasy fan, I think there's still some good things there. That's a good story. The acting's great, and I think the writing is very well done, especially if you like the goofy songs that they brought songs in, and they sing some songs. Very, very well done. And it's light on the magic, really, and the magic and the fantastical, I would say, which it's not off-putting. Like Game of Thrones, same thing there. It's light on the fantastical. So it's not going to put off a lot of people where you're like, oh, they're just doing gibberish and moving their hands and magic things happen. So
I totally agree. And not to cut you off or anything, but since you just brought that up, I totally agree with that because my wife, not a Lord of the Rings fan at all. She's not really into that stuff, like any type of like the extremely like magical type stuff anyways. But yeah, this one, like, so when I first watched it, I did the watch through by myself because I figured she wouldn't like it. But after I watched it, I was like, you don't even have to know anything about the Lord of the Rings. You don't have to be a fan. Like, this is just an incredible show. You get to know the characters, and a lot of, like you're saying, like the magic stuff is so barely in there that it almost doesn't have any bearing on the show. And so, I totally would say, even if you're not a Lord of the Rings fan, and you maybe weren't interested, give it a shot. Give it, 2 or 3 episodes, even while you're, cleaning the house, doing laundry, and just give it a shot because it is actually it's an incredibly crafted show with, like you said, great actors. And I totally would give it my recommendation.
It's one of a kind. I'm glad we're getting another season. I would have not, as a young Todd, would have expected any of these things to happen. They wouldn't have. I mean, back in the 90s, there was so limited amount of cool geek media that you just had to like anything that was out there. So we're just blessed. So if you guys don't take it for granted, we don't know. We don't want this to go away. And please support these things because if you don't, they won't happen. So something you should support, and that is Weird. This is the Weird Al biopic that is not autobiographical at all. Apparently, it was written by Weird Al and his writing partner to just be not real. Like almost like a tall tale of, somebody, did you know Weird Al did this? Did you know? I mean, it's just all made up. And that's the point. This is just supposed to be a walk hard, pop star, don't stop popping. All of those really dumb like biopics that aren't real. And it's about time. This is on the Roku channel, which is, you know what? If you've got a browser, you can watch it there. If you have a Roku box, you can watch it on that. Some services, I think Amazon Fire might have it, but it's not everywhere. So, but if you do have a browser, you can watch it there and you can, beam it onto your TV if you can't watch it. So I'd highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. Daniel Radcliffe plays Weird Al. It's basically starting off when he's a little kid going to, I won't say where it ends because I think that's part of the fun. Kind of like it encapsulates his life. And it is full of fantastic cameos of actors playing actors and people.
Nice.
And it's well worth just like, oh, that person's in it. And there's some just really funny things that I don't want to give away. That I think everybody put their all into this. They had a great time. For some reason, Daniel Radcliffe was really ripped for some reason. Don't know if that was just for the role or he's doing something else. Maybe he's going to play Wolverine. We don't know. Might. That'd be awesome. But it's a lot of fun. I will say it's less like really laugh out loud versus just like, that's clever or that's fun.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people are saying it's not as funny as I would have expected. It's kind of like one of those probably funnier if it had been only like 45 minutes than an hour and a half, because keeping the gimmicks and all those things going is hard to do. But I really enjoyed it. I'd recommend it to anybody. And it was just, Weird Al does that really good balance of like very wholesome, but he's also very irreverent at times where it's like, oh, Weird Al can be a little bit edgy at times. Yeah. So I'd recommend it for anybody who's a fan of Weird Al. I am. I go back. I owned. I think I still own the cassettes of Weird Al back in the day, and I played those to pieces because that's what I had. Like I said, the World of Nerd. There wasn't a lot of goofy things you could hear on the radio, things like that. So that's where you got it typically. So yeah. So check out Weird if you get a chance.
Yeah, I definitely want to. I think you did. I think I felt like you posted about it on Twitter or something. Did you?
I probably did.
Yeah, and so, anyways, like I remember, I think I seen it when I was in Hawaii like a month and a half ago. They had already had it and it was funny because somebody else was posting that it was funny that it's on Roku, and they were just like, "Who even has that?" Right? And I responded. I was like, my parents. And I wasn't trying to be like a diss, but it was really funny because I was like trying to think, and I was like, I think they literally are the only people I know that have Roku. And so yeah, when I was over there at their house in Hawaii, I was scrolling through. We were gonna watch something. Maybe it was like an episode of Andor, and I saw it come across a banner about it, and I was like, what? That's hilarious. I'm definitely gonna watch it because I'm a big Weird Al fan as well. At me it was CDs. But like any CD like that I get my hands on, I download all the older MP3s from like Eat It, instead of Beat It and stuff like that back in the day with the Michael Jackson spoofs and things like that. And yeah, I've always loved those. I feel like there was definitely a few years where I played more Weird Al versions of songs than like the actual song. And but yeah, so I was excited about it. And like I said, I'm gonna be back over there come the end of the month, and I was already thinking about, I was like, as soon as I get there, I'm gonna bust that thing on, we're gonna watch that and make my parents watch it with me and stuff. But yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that you could watch it anywhere else, like on a browser or anything like that. So
yeah, I mean, it's ad supported, so they really want you to watch it anywhere. And for some reason, I don't know why it's not on Apple TV, because it's not like it's competing. I mean, it's just they do have the Roku channel. It has like live stuff and has special content. Yeah, but that's the problem. Like, it's not like I have an LG TV and there's no Roku app for that. I'm like, okay, well, do I have a Roku device? I'm like, I don't have one on that one, but there's one upstairs, and we bought a really crappy little 24-inch TV upstairs that it's a Roku TV, so it's got built in. So yeah, so there's ways to watch, but yeah, your browser is probably the easiest. Everybody has a mobile phone. To go to Roku.com, watch it there. So
yeah, I need to jump in for sure.
Now it's time for us to leave the Geek Easy, pay our bill, and get in an Uber where we're going to the airport to Air Qantas so we can travel to the Thunderdome, where Tina is waiting for us to talk about our spoiler-filled review of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome!
Thank you, Tina. We're sitting in the Thunderdome where the mutants have been gathered for a topic or a game to be entertained. And this week, we are doing a spoiler-filled discussion on Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. So, folks, you've been warned. Spoilers lie ahead. Go see the movie and then come back and listen and play along with our review. So with that, I'll just give you a little take on the premise of the movie and where we can go from there. Essentially, this takes place after the blip. The people of Wakanda are mourning the loss of T'Challa after he passes away from an undisclosed illness. And the people of Wakanda are mourning. A year passes, and we are essentially brought up to speed of what is happening in the world of Wakanda. Queen Ramonda is leading the country, but they are struggling their place in the world. People are after the vibranium, and they do not know essentially where they will go next, as they are basically without their protector. and the world is putting the pressure on them to share resources and essentially share the resources of Wakanda to the rest of the world. So we go from there. This is directed by Ryan Coogler, written by Ryan Coogler as well, with Joe Robert Cole, and the cast: Letitia Wright as Shuri, Lupita Nyong'o, Nakia, Danae Guerrera, Izakoya, Winston Duke back as M'Baku, Angela Bassett as Ramonda, Tinoch Huerta as Namor. And to be honest, I'll have to remember how to pronounce Namor, because I feel like I got a couple of different options for that. So we can probably align on where we need to be with that. Martin Freeman, Everett Ross, and Dominique Thorne as Riri. So let's see. The last Black Panther was a huge film, iconic to many. It felt more like a cultural experience to many versus just a standard film. Almost completely African American or African Black cast in the roles of the leads, and it was definitely a combination of culture, music, and expression based on a classic comic book character who finally got to be represented on screen. And obviously, we had the real world death of Chadwick Boseman, which caused this movie to have to rethink what it was going to be, I believe, halfway through, although when they were going to do. So it really caused some challenges. So this movie has a lot on its shoulders, not only from being part of the MCU, telling stories, dealing with what happened before, what's going to happen next, but also losing, and I don't think we've ever had this before, except maybe Heath Ledger is probably the closest, whereas when Heath Ledger played the Joker, he died before the movie came out, but he was able to film the whole role. I don't know if there was ever a plan to bring him back, but obviously that's a one-off. But this is supposed to be an ongoing character, one of the biggest franchises the MCU ever, and he's lost. The fact that this movie got made is amazing to begin with. And this movie was a roller coaster. So with that, Josiah, I'm going to turn it over to you. So just, overall, your impressions of the film, things that stood out, where do you feel, was the movie successful in what it tried to do? Did it do all these things? I mean, what do you think? And there's a lot to dissect in this movie.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's tough to even know where to start, because like you said, this movie had to be stretched in so many different ways. And I think Ryan Coogler did a really good job, because he was able to hit some really, really awesome like story points, but also, like you said, that like the first movie was a big statement. It was a big statement, and that they wanted to make, and I think it landed well for most. And I feel like this one too, it wasn't just once again making it, these real big statements, but also it was honoring, not only an amazing actor and, an amazing Black Panther, but also just an amazing person. And I think it's really tough, like you were saying, when, you have to decide, okay, how are we going to take this story? Are we going to recast the role? Are we going to have him in there at all? Are we not going to have him? Like, how are we going to honor this person, but at the same time tell like a compelling story? And I think so. And I'll just say, like, my personal opinion, just, without diving super deep into just that question, is I think that they honored Chadwick Boseman very well. They started off very good, just giving you like a little bit of a teaser. And when they went through the Marvel and they had all those beautiful pictures of him, and like on from the previous movies and things like that, and like he's such an incredibly like welcoming person, and like to look at, right? Like his smile is infectious, and he seems like just a great guy. So hitting all those, they already kind of got you in the feels a little bit. But then once again, you've already said it, spoiler, but yeah, then once you hit that end and you hit the end credit and stuff, oh man, like everybody was crying, about it, because it at some point, like cinema becomes more than cinema. You start you start thinking about the actual person, the lives they're involved in making, great cinema. You start thinking about the family. You think of maybe your family that might be struggling with cancer, struggling with, an illness that maybe will never be cured. Things like that, just, it's really kind of gets you. And then, the direction they went with that, once again, it was incredible, because it was such a great monument to him and his success. But I love the fact that, they it's like, it's hard to even say it because it's such a huge spoiler, but that he has a son, right? And obviously, based on the timing that you kind of put out at the beginning, this was before the blip, right? Because that son is already too old, like, so it would have had to be before the blip. So now you have all that, and the fact that she said, like, he was getting him ready for that, getting him prepared. He knew that he was going to die. It really just, I'm getting goosebumps now, because it's just like someone who has cancer. They know that they're going to pass. They don't know when. It could be a week, a month, a year, years. But either way, like, when you know that, you just, it just wrecks you, because you know that these conversations happen all the time with kids. They know a parent is going to pass away, and so they're trying to get them ready and prepared the best that they can. So yeah, that was such an amazing thing that they did there. And like, if you couldn't even imagine them being able to do all that in a movie, then they have Talocan, right? And they have
Yes.
the whole, like, Mayan empire, and that's another huge thing. That's, for our
I
central,
didn't even talk
yeah,
about that. I'm like, yeah,
yeah,
by the way, there is another hidden super like society that we
yeah,
have never seen before, and now it's introduced
yeah.
in this movie. Talk about a lot to handle.
It's just like, it's, so then they throw that at you, and obviously Wakanda's always beautiful. We get some more of the area. I'm not sure if they're, maybe somebody could make fun of me later, but the specific areas in Wakanda, but like the where M'Baku was,
Hmm.
right? So you get to see a
In the
little bit more
mountains.
of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, those like high mountains or whatever, which is also, it's Wakanda, but it's so different. It's a different people, it's a different style. It's all snowy, and it's not like the beach, kind of style that you're used to, near like the, what, where most of the filming is in Wakanda. So it's like so different. And so that was really cool. And to, once again, have them all kind of like get together and team up and everything like that. That was, I think they did that really well. I will say, I feel like, once again, Marvel does really good with like tying all these different movies together, right? They take little pieces of this and that, and like, you can go back now, and people are way better than me about it, but you can go back to Iron Man 1, right? And you can be like, what? There's that guy from this movie way over
Hmm.
here. Oh, here's this little story beat that they were doing way back then, just kind of like blows your mind how the interconnectivity of stuff like that. And so I understand why that's like important and it's cool later. But like, I feel like in this movie, they're like, I mean, it was incredibly powerful and emotional because of Chadwick Boseman. We have everything going on with Wakanda, and we can go into this maybe a little bit later too. But also a big difference is, so T'Challa and uh, Shuri, and really even Nakia, were kind of like at the end of the last movie saying, you know, or the last time we really seen them saying like, okay, we're gonna help. We're gonna help underprivileged children.
Hmm.
We're gonna help, we're gonna start using our technology to help the world. Now he dies, and then now we have Angela Bassett, now the new ruler queen, and she's going back to the old ways, saying like, no, like, our borders are closed, we're not helping anybody, type situation. I mean, they don't really go too much into it, but they do have those like outreach science facilities,
Hmm.
which I mean, they could possibly be like they're helping people, but from what it appeared, she was more kind of back to like the old style where, like, I don't trust anybody with our technology type situation. But so then you kind of have that, going on, and then you have Tolokan, and you have his story and those people, and that's so powerful and that's so amazing. And then like you have like these random like CIA like
Yeah.
moments that I feel like, for me, like, you know, like I know that we're tying, you know, these characters in to later be like, oh yeah, she was, you know, she was on uh what is it, the green, or was it the, what's the one with the archer? What's
Oh,
that show?
Hawkeye.
Yeah,
Hawkeye. Oh,
Hawkeye.
no.
There we go.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because I was thinking I have a Green Arrow hat on, so
yeah,
that's why my mind's
yep,
gone. But anyway, so Hawkeye. So we're like, okay, we have her in there. You know, we're kind of like putting some pieces together.
yep.
But like, I feel like the whole like they were married and divorced, and you know, like I feel like that kind of like took me out of like these super crazy powerful moments and decisions, and you know, these whole civilizations, and it was like really deep, right? And then it kind of like pulled you back, whereas like I'm trying to think of a good example, but let's put like director Fury, when
Hmm.
his moments seemed meaningful, right? Like you get sucked out of like this crazy battles and fighting in space and aliens, and he's just a guy, but like it seemed like what he was doing and saying was like also powerful. Where this one, it's kind of like,
It's a
you know, like
contract obligation to have Martin
yeah,
Freeman back as, and
right,
I did appreciate though. Whenever he was involved, they kind of made them the butt of a joke. Like, oh, look
right,
at my favorite. Oh God, my uh, he said my favorite captor in chains or whatever.
right,
Yeah. So
uh-huh.
they made a good. To your point, I think, you know, and just sorry if I'm butting in, but
No, you're
I
good.
think you make a great point that the fact that this movie felt overstuffed with things that took you away from kind of the focus, like
Hmm.
Namor and things like that. Now it's like, and I think another character, because I mean, the whole point, Val, and she's
Yeah,
making the Thunderbolts and she's there. It felt like I'm watching a different thing. And it's like, that
yeah,
didn't, it took me out of it. The other part I felt like was Riri Williams, which
hmm,
I don't know if they implicitly said it would basically, because I thought was going to be that the school that T'Challa created in, I believe, you know, Compton. I can't remember the city
hmm,
in California, where it was going to be like an establishment to
right,
help people. I don't know if she went to one of those schools or not, if it was even said, because we run into
hmm,
her in MIT. So she's obviously intelligent, but she got brought in. I kind of felt like kind of the same way Spider-Man got brought in a lot of
hmm,
ways for like Civil War, but I kind of felt like it just felt like it didn't flow very well. It felt like it was just
right,
another thing to bring in that really, and I think maybe it was a holdover from when they were originally going to be on. That was going to be more the purpose of, you know, if
yeah,
T'Challa was still around, it would be exploring some of his obligations, and I guess. But yeah, to your
yeah,
point, I mean, it's like it felt like a lot of things took us away. So it felt like it kind of diminished the whole thing, but it didn't make it a worse movie. It made it a
yeah,
more clunky. It felt
yeah,
really clunky. It didn't flow as well
uh-huh.
as the first movie.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And obviously, you know, they were dropping like, you know, I mean, they're dropping hints like on top of your head, you know, about Ironheart. I mean, she's, you know, she's cutting that out. It drops. I mean, and then like the suit and everything like that. And, you know, so they're just like really like putting it in your face. And I kind of feel like, you know, to once again, your point of saying about it being clunky is I kind of feel like I would have rathered her still come in, still help, you know, in making like the herb or doing something, so like her character becomes something, but not as they were trying to, you know, we are supposed to be introduced to her, care about her, you know, and then she's now one of the heroes in the suit at the end, right? So like I feel like it was really fast, whereas they didn't give her enough screen time, I feel like, to for me to like, even at the end, like what could have been like a beautiful moment about the car, right?
Yeah.
Like to me kind of just was like, I see what they're trying to do, but I didn't feel what I know you want me to, you know, like I
Hmm.
didn't feel like, oh my goodness, that's so beautiful, or what, you know what I mean? Like I didn't feel that. I thought it was cool and it was, you know, interesting for the movie, but I feel like, you know, it more resources and time could have been spent even a little bit more like on Talokan and those people, and then at the end, like the female character that talks to to Namor at the end, right? Like appears to be somebody very important. You know, obviously has the ear of Namor, so like that was really interesting. And then I'm like, what in the world? Why am I seeing this very important moment now? And I don't recognize her really. I guess I could remember she was in different scenes, but I was like, why do I not know more about her? But then, we're kind of spending more time with a character that was never really fleshed out enough, I guess you could say. Like,
Yeah.
and look, I already told you before, I was like, I don't try to nitpick things, but now I'm kind of nitpicking. But
Well,
it's like, I
it's
don't know,
fair,
like,
right? Because there was a
yeah,
lot in this movie. Like it's a lot. I walked away and I'm like, how do I feel? I'm like, I really was blown away. The sadness, the grief, kind of overtook me. But then when I stepped away, I'm like, what was the sum of what was it as strong as the sum of its parts, or were there things that like detracted from the message it was trying to like? And there were things that I felt like, to your point, we got Kamala Khan in Miss Marvel. We got 6 episodes of seeing how she became who she was. With Riri
Yeah.
Williams, essentially she'd been like, oh yeah, I got this covered, and it's like, I didn't feel like she struggled at all. I think like she was like,
Yeah.
I got this. I'm like, that's not a good character development. That's kind of like, or America in Doctor Strange, the character of America as well. I feel like here's a character I just didn't, but at least she got more time on screen because she was part of it. Still, once again, I felt like that was where the movie was forced to be, oh, we have to create characters that are going to be in other things. This is how we're going to do it. This is still an MCU thing where like, that's where I feel like where Black Panther I think really excelled, because it didn't have to worry about it. It could just tell the story of Black Panther and its people. It didn't have to hammer in a million different things because we had to link everything. It just happened to do that because we were introduced to him in another movie. Now we get to hear more about him and his culture and all those things. Whereas I feel like with Riri Williams, I felt like, yeah, she's in this because it's he was obligated to maybe bring her in, or it was going to work better when Ryan Coogler had more time to focus on other things versus, wow, we got to deal with like the biggest death in the world and people grieving. And it's like, it just felt like this is, I'm glad this movie happened, but I really kind of feel like I wish they could have tweaked some things so it felt a little more cohesive. The one thing that I think is a good part, because we talk about, the end credits there is an end credit or mid credits, I guess, after Rihanna's song. That's the best way. After Rihanna's song's over, stick around. And this is a weird one because it felt like it was just essentially picking up where the movie ended. It was just like there was no gap. And it was where we were introduced to his son. So they didn't have like oh, here's the next villain. It was really, this is who's going to be the king, because Shuri wasn't crowned as queen. She didn't. She is the Black Panther, but she is not the ruler. And this is where I could see it, where you get things going, and eventually we do get T'Challa's king, and he's going to eventually take on the mantle from her, which is perfectly fine. You don't have to give the king be the protector. And I think it's great for Shuri that she gets to step into her own presence as the protector of Wakanda. No, I think it was hard on Shuri. Now, this I was going to say. Now, Letitia Wright, very good in the role. I think she doesn't have the presence, and that's not fair, of Chadwick Boseman. She wasn't supposed to. And I kind of think it's fair. So I will be curious how they develop her character, because we got the sad and the grief, but how do we get her to be a different character going forward that is managing that mantle, her role in Wakanda, and when do we see her again? I don't know if there's going to be a third Black Panther film. I don't know. I don't know if that's in the cards or not, or she will be in more like, I've heard there's going to be I think there's going to be a Dora Milaje series on Disney Plus. So that may make sense. It may be Black Panther and Dora Milaje, where they all get to be further developed. But I mean, I think this movie had a lot to handle, and it did the best job it could with what it was supposed to do. I just kind of wish they could have pulled back on some of the extraneous parts, because I think it would have made a stronger film overall.
Yeah, because going back to like Namor, his like story and his arc was incredible. I love that it was giving you piece by piece. That's exactly what you want. You want the audience to continually like see what they're doing and like have to make decisions in your mind. Is that right? Is that wrong? Are they a villain? Are they good? And then as you get more and more pieces, you start contradicting yourself. Like, what would I do in that situation? How would I feel in that situation? I love what they did with his character, and like going forward, I love that end piece, once again, that conversation piece, like that he, when he was talking to that unknown female,
Namora. It's actually Namora. Yeah, she's the one that had the headrest you saw. As she was. It's funny because once you take away her apparel and like kind of like Akuma. Akuma was the
Mhm.
other one who had the
Okay.
headdress and the gear, and he was kind of the other really heavier, the not heavier, I mean he's not big fat, but I mean like his main cast of characters around him. Yeah, once you take off their gear, it's kind of like a little more plainer. But yeah, that was Namora, and she's
She like
I think they're a couple.
Queen-esque.
I think so. I
Or
think they're a couple.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's what I kind of got. I got those vibes that it wasn't just like a, like I felt like it was more than just, she's like a leader and obviously he's like kind of more like their god. I felt like it was more like a relationship esque. So yeah, when Namor and Namora are talking, right? Like that was amazing because I really cared about that story and that was an interesting story to me. And I love that they were taking, back all the way to like, like 15th century or whatever
Mhm.
it was, and like kind of tying that in with the new. And so you have like kind of similar mentalities and you can understand like as the story is unfolding. That was really good. And so they made it seem like we're going to hear more of them. And he even basically just said like they're gonna need us, so that was really interesting. And then I think, the other part is, like you said, Shuri, like it was, everybody was like, okay, who's gonna do it, right? Okay, we got this. We have someone else has to take up the mantle, right? So everybody's deciding. I kind of felt like it was going to be Shuri. Like I was like, I know that they're probably gonna play it off a little bit, but I feel like it has to be her. It just makes the most sense. And so I wasn't like shocked or anything when it ended up being her. I do like the fact that they played a little bit like, okay, how are we gonna do this? Like it was Killmonger had already destroyed it all. How are we going to do this? So that was really interesting. I liked how they were able to do that. It felt like the stakes were high and it happened all good. And then, when she actually took it, and she's walking, right, and like we're gonna be like, okay, who is this, who's this gonna be, and stuff like that. I literally I went through so many people in my head as she was taking those steps because I was like, it could be anyone. I was like, if it's Chadwick Boseman, if it's T'Challa, like I'm gonna freak out for one. Like if
Mhm.
they had somehow already had some filming or if they did something, that. And I was like, well, it also could be her dad,
Mhm.
and so, like, so I'm kind of going through these different characters. Like maybe it's someone like a female from, like, way further, and they kind of throw that into the mix or whatever. And anyways, and that, and then she walks up and sees that it's Killmonger, I was like, what? Like, oh man, that blew me away. And then I love it because of her character and because of, the emotions that she was feeling and the actions she was taking based on what was happening in her life, what has happened to her. I think that actually made her character more relevant to me, more interesting, because it wasn't, once again, it wasn't like, okay, she's a good girl and she's going to do the right thing. Like I love that they gave you that, like, oh, what is she going to do? Like, is she gonna, like just, go crazy, burn the world down like she said. And I love that he threw that back at her, like to Namor, threw it back at, like, he's like, I heard you, like you said you wanted to burn the world down, let's do it together, we're the same, right? And so I love that, they showed that she had those feelings. Obviously she was able to overcome and not be so diabolical at the end, but I do love that it gives her character a little bit more, I guess, like, um, um, it's a little more dynamic, right? You're not guaranteed what she's going to do next, who, what her actions are going to be, and even up into that mid-credit scene. Like I don't really know. I don't know what her actions are going to be. She obviously doesn't want to be queen. She probably was in her right to take it based on what she is. And then now that she's taken up the mantle of Black Panther, she definitely could have probably, taken up as queen, and she didn't do that. So like you said, like, is she going to like stay there, with her nephew and cousin? Is she going to start doing her own thing, and um yeah, so I think those are all really interesting things. And then the last thing that I'll just touch on is also, I like the fact that we have now like a young T'Challa, because you mentioned it before. We have a lot of shows now with like Miss Marvel, right? And what else do we got? We have Hawkeye, we have Haley, right?
Yep, Kate. We got Kate
Yeah,
Bishop. Yep. So we're
Kate
gonna have young
Bishop, you
Avengers are
know,
coming
like,
through.
yeah,
Yep.
so like we start seeing like all of these younger characters that are like, okay, maybe we're working something like that in, that even if it's another time jump, like, you know, maybe if now T'Challa's like 16 or something like that, you know, 10 years into the future, you know, because multiple movies and things down the way. But I feel like that would be pretty cool. Oh, and that's yeah, that's what I'm spacing. Love and Thunder, we got Thor's little girl now,
Yep.
basically, or
Absolutely.
whatever. So, you know, like stuff, you know. Oh, and then Hulk from She-Hulk. Now we got
Yep.
we
Yeah,
got
young Hulk, yeah, Scar,
young,
and you know, if you count, I guess Peter Parker, if he comes
yeah,
back, you
yeah,
know, maybe he's younger, and then we've got apparently a Nova series that's coming out, which Nova is like a young, uh, powerful character. He's in this, like, he's a teenager that gets powers from the Nova Corps as
mm-hmm,
well. So yeah, they're I think that's the right move, is create characters that are younger that can evolve. You can get to know them. Makes a lot
mm-hmm,
of sense.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there,
yeah,
which is going to be interesting. That was a surprise with him, you know, being introduced. I mean, because that obviously gets clunky. I'm like, okay, well, let me figure that. Oh, like, yeah, the blip and everything like that. So it makes sense. Wanting
mm-hmm,
to protect him from the world, give him a different childhood
yeah,
than growing up as a royal, and
mm-hmm,
yeah, I really appreciate it. Now, I do want to touch back on to Namor, because I haven't really talked about him much, and you eloquently stated, you know, the fact that we got a culture. Namor, when he's like Marvel's oldest character, along with Human Torch.
mm-hmm,
1940 was brought in under Timely Comics,
mm-hmm,
and that was supposed to be Atlantis. Now they've moved it
yeah,
to, I believe, like you said, it's focusing on Latin American culture,
mm-hmm,
and I think you said the Mayans, so
yeah,
it's inspired by that,
mm-hmm,
and the how they brought it out and how they explained it was very cool, very well told. It wasn't overstuffed with like in 20 million years ago. No, it's like it was
yeah,
a very beautiful story how it was told, and some great imagery, and the fact that, you know, he is the type of villain I like, or anti-hero is probably the best,
yeah,
because he has been done wrong. He
mm-hmm,
was forced away from the world because of what was done to them. So you feel for him and you understand why
yeah,
he's doing is like, and he's just trying to protect his people, because
mm-hmm,
if they get uncovered, they're going to be exploited, and all these bad things that happened before would happen again. So I
mm-hmm,
do, and I think that it's interesting that he tried to build a dynamic saying like, Wakanda's about to be exploited, and I want to stop that from happening. And you need
mm-hmm,
a partner. Obviously, things happened, but I mean, I really liked Namor's character. Every time he was on screen, it was amazing to watch the things
yeah,
he could do, and just really exciting. And he made that character feel, he was kind of wry in certain instances. Like, he was kind of goofy in a lot of ways, but he was
yeah,
still, he had a presence.
mm-hmm,
And I think he really brought it. And it's great that we're getting that. I like the pivot to change him up to be a different type of looking Namor. And that was one thing I would, now his character's name, he said he took it from No Love, which is No Amor,
mm-hmm,
in my bad pronunciation. I did
yeah.
take 4 years of Spanish, but
There you go.
my pronunciation's horrible. But then it's like, was it Namor? Namor? What did you take away from his name? Because I probably killed it.
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I guess I've just been calling him Namor, but yeah, that is interesting. I guess you could kind of go about it a couple of different ways, but I feel like I'm just gonna fall on my sword and just say Namor, and I'm never
Yeah.
gonna change it, even if anyone tells me I'm wrong.
They didn't ask us to pronounce the Submariner or Submariner. Thank goodness, because nobody can still get that one. Which one is it?
Yeah.
I don't know. And he didn't call himself the Submariner, which is just a
Uh-huh.
funny name. So yeah. So yeah, I think it's, once again, and it's laying the seeds. And because
Mm-hmm.
Namor is one of the old characters, part of the Illuminati, which we saw the Illuminati in Doctor Strange. He's one of the
Mm-hmm.
characters that is powerful and protecting his own people. He's very much like Black Adam in a lot of ways, or Black
Yeah.
Adam's like him, where he's trying to protect his people. But I think this was told so much more better, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, I just really thought it was really well done. So
Mm-hmm.
so let's see, did we cover everything that we needed to?
Yeah, I think like if I would just have to, you know, just blanket statement the movie, right? I would say it was a great movie. I think overall it was really good. There's definitely some nitpicky parts, and you know, if though I understand why they did some of it, I feel like it could have been probably like 15 minutes, 20 minutes shorter, and it still would have been just as powerful, just as amazing, and maybe it would have cut a couple of things. One thing the first thing when I walked out of the theater that I was saying is, I feel like the whole Ironheart, the whole, the Riri thing, if she would have just been used for her brain, to help in this battle, whatever she might have done, helping with the suits, helping with the herb and things like that. And then the an end credit then had her working on something and drops the heart out or something. You know what I mean? I feel like
Yeah.
that would have maybe been a little bit more epic. And because then you're like, oh, we kind of know this girl. She's smart and help. Like, oh, that's who she is. Okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But this,
That's
it
a
was
great
just
point.
like, it was like, oh yeah, it's probably going to be her. Yeah, it's pretty much her. Oh, yep, it's her. And then after that, there's like 3 times where they're like forcing you to believe that this is what the person's going to end up being, And so I think maybe that would be like a thing, like of my nitpicky side that I would have done. But I think overall they hit the emotional side. They did an amazing like memorandum for Chadwick Boseman all the way through the movie was amazing. They did hit him and his family justice for how great of a person he was. I think they did great there. The whole Tolo Khan and that story, that was incredible. They did amazing. And, even Wakanda dealing with the aftermath of everything, and then all of the different villages kind of teaming up together, and, the just how emotions affect rulers, it's, not, no one's immune from emotion. So how the queen reacts, how the princess reacts, all these different kind of things, even Namor for that matter, how his emotions are involved in also being a ruler. Like, I think they just across the board, they hit so many amazing things that it's really hard to fault this movie because they covered so much and they did an amazing job doing it.
You're absolutely right. I think I like your take. I think that would have been the perfect way to bring in Riri, make her the person that invented the thing. She's recognized as being really smart, helps them with technology, things like that. That would have been perfect. And then once again, leading, it's like, we know who she is now. Oh, and she's going to develop something and be a bigger character down the line versus here's Ironheart. It's kind of set up. So it felt like a little overstuffed. Same thing. I'm like, oh, here's more suits of armor showing up. I'm like, okay, that's a little bit much now. A little too overstuffed maybe in that category. But I do want to call out, I really, really was blown away by Angela Bassett and the presence she brought on screen. The biggest sin in comic book movies was the fact that she was not Storm in the original X-Men series, because Storm should be African. She should have that presence. She shouldn't be Halle Berry, who's just talking with a normal accent. It's just a different presence. So the fact that she got to be shown, and she looks like she could beat the crap out of everybody at her age of 60 or whatever, is amazing. And I also thought Danae Guerrera, I mean, the loss and everything, she being blamed essentially for everything, and just her presence as well was phenomenal. Just really good, strong acting performances by the whole cast. Once again, get rid of the fluff of the Val and Agent Ross. I just felt like that was a big waste of time. Yeah. So we'll give it a score. It's hard to score movies because it's a feeling, but you know what? Well, we always do it regardless, and it's on the spot. You may change your mind a week later, but what would you give it out of 10? I guess Panther Claws.
Okay, 10 Panther Claws. Man, like I said, it's so difficult for me to find fault, and I love when you have that issue. I love when you go into a movie, you want to grade it, score it, and it's just so hard to find fault. I'm one of those people that I'm kind of like a perfectionist, so it's really hard for me to ever give anything like a perfect anything. But I mean, for what I know that they were dealing with, what they had to do, what they wanted to give us, and what I felt like walking out of the theater, I mean, man, like it's like, oh man, like it's hard for me to even say it, but man, I feel like it's like a 9. Like it's just, man, they hit you in the feels. They made me sad. They made me happy. They made me laugh. They made me angry. you know, when you watch different things that was like happening to Namor's people and things like that, like it was like they went through all the emotion on top of, you know, like everything that they did for, you know, Chadwick Boseman and stuff like, man, I mean, 8.59. I mean, it was incredible. It was incredible.
Well said. Well, I will give it an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
I thought it did the best with a bad situation,
Yeah.
but I will always compare it to the first Black Panther, which I think is
Right.
probably my top MCU movie. Just all just so well told.
Mhm.
It cut out the fluff and
Yeah.
really told a strong story about a people. The music was so strong. This movie, I felt like the music was lesser than, including a
Mhm.
Rihanna song, which I kind of like. Okay, sure, why not? But I just felt like that song, while it was heartfelt, kind of
Mhm.
felt like it should have been something different, and I felt like it should have been something maybe Wakanda inspired. That blend of which I think, so I don't know, it's minor pits, but 8 out of 10. I think, you know.
Do you think that Rihanna was added because she's rumored to be doing the halftime event at the Super Bowl?
Probably. I don't know.
I kind of
Yeah,
feel like because she's been gone a while, and then that was this is a very iconic, epic movie, and then that was an important song, and I'm like, you know, like how did that happen? Was she asked? You know, did she want to do this? Because like I agree too. Like I was kind of shocked. I'm like, whoa, Rihanna's like came in out of nowhere, and then
yeah.
all of a sudden, and then when we find out that song is used for that moment, like I was like, hmm.
It's just like using a pop like I feel like when you put a song, a pop song or whatever you want to call it, at that
Mhm.
time, I think it dates it. It just feels like
Yeah.
it just, you know, it feels like if they had removed that and just put something, maybe something else that's a little less a known person, because I think it puts it
Mhm.
on. It's oh, it's Rihanna versus that's a beautiful song.
Right. Yeah,
So
that's
I don't
another
know.
good point.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
true.
Oh
Mhm.
well, you know what? Like I said, best of a bad situation. So Ryan
Mhm.
Coogler, you pulled it off, man. That's doing
Mhm.
fantastic at the box office. I think $180 million is what it's doing. This movie
Yeah.
will be huge, probably the biggest
Mhm.
movie of the year. Well, except when I don't know. Avatar may make so
Yeah.
much money in its
Oh
2 weeks that
man.
we don't know. We don't know. But yeah.
Yeah.
So well, this was
Mhm.
a lot of fun
Yeah.
talking about this fantastic movie. Obviously, wish we'd have had our third party to talk about it.
Yeah.
But you know, maybe we'll have a second chance in the future. But Josiah, this was wonderful. I'm glad we got to be on the show together. Thank you for pinch hitting while Charlie was gone. This is great. I always like to have new voices on the show. So with that, though, tell people where they can follow you on the interwebs.
Yeah. So I'm usually in other people's streams. So if you have any other like live streams, I love talk shows. During the day, I'm usually jumping in people's live talk shows about anything nerdy. But this is our first time. But yeah, like I love Star Wars, Star Trek. You know, anything like space, like anything you want to talk about that people would consider nerdy. I'm usually into it. So yeah, I'm always around. I spend a lot of time on Twitter. It's something that I like as far as like interaction. I love interacting with other people, hearing different people's takes on tech news and media, things like that. And also, I get a kick a lot of times out of how people act on the internet. So yeah, that's I'm usually around on Twitter. My Twitter name is at Martinez mostly, so it's a reverse of my name. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm usually around talking about all things nerdy on there for sure. Like you had mentioned, I'm also a co-host on mostly Star Wars, and as the name implies, we mostly talk about Star Wars. There's some things that jump in there every now and then, but right now we've just been spoiled with Star Wars stuff. So pretty much weekly, we're covering Andor. When the Tales of the Jedi came out, we obviously covered that. We're going to continue to be covering things as they come out, like Bad Batch coming up as well. Um, but yeah, so YouTube, it's mostly Star Wars. You can find us that way. And finally, I always have to shout out my son. My son is 6 years old. He's been wanting to start a YouTube channel from before he could even really talk. He was super into wanting to do a YouTube. He'd pretend to be doing YouTube. And so I waited till he was 6 years old. And I'm like, okay, like, let's do it for you. And he's actually the one that pushed me to start Mostly Star Wars podcast, because I was like, if he can do this, I can do it. But yeah, so my son's channel, his name's Hezekiah. So it's Hezekiah's Toys and Games. And he's going to be doing a bunch of stuff. He wants to do like toy reveals, unboxings. He's done a couple of lives playing Switch games. Just a little bit of everything. He's also... he's been blessed by so many people already in the community, giving him things, reaching out, gifting him things. And so he's like, I definitely want to do that. So we're pretty much trying to do like monthly giveaways, trying to give back for all the love and support that he's gotten. So yeah. Also, if you're into winning free things, he's always doing a giveaway. Right now he's doing 3 months of Game Pass Ultimate. So yeah, check him out. Hezekiah's Toys and Games. I'm a proud father, and I will tell everybody about him. So
That's fantastic. It's really great. Being a dad is great to share things with your kids, but also understanding what your kids love and supporting with that. Because you know what, they don't always love the same thing you do, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
That's how I learn about new things, and I stay young through my son. So thank you again.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
Folks, you can follow me at Toxtra on the interwebs. I've been, right before this, I was watching the Vikings game. I am a huge NFL fan. I love Michigan State football. They are horrible this year. I'm also a fantasy football fan. So I do a lot of that, but also just, having fun, being geeky with people on the internet webs is what I love to do. Follow at Secret Friends U for all things Secret Friends. That's where you're going to hear most of the stuff we're doing. SecretFriendsUnite.com is where all our stuff is housed, and obviously YouTube for all of our stuff. And we have a Discord. Go there. Just enjoy a great group of people as we have fun sharing hints and tips on everything, food, the things we love, spoilers. We do it all there. So with that, I'll say thank you, Josiah. Thank you, friends, for following us on this journey. And as always, be the hero, not the villain.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow at Secret Friends U on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.